It was like finding a single, impossible word from a language no one knew existed. That one word changes everything. Those were the words of Dr. Eris Thorne, lead archaeologist on the project. He was holding a fragment of pottery, no bigger than his thumb. It was unearthed in a remote, windswept corner of the Gobi Desert. To most, it was just a piece of clay. But to Thorne and his team, it was the start of an adventure that would challenge the very foundations of our history books. This small discovery, made on a scorching afternoon, was the first clue. It hinted that we were on the verge of uncovering a civilization lost not just to time, but to our entire understanding of the ancient world. The initial expedition wasn't looking for a lost city. They were there to study ancient nomadic migration patterns. The goal was simple: track the movements of people who lived thousands of years ago. The team was expecting to find arrowheads, fire pits, and maybe some burial sites, standard stuff. But then they found the fragments. They were unlike anything seen in Central Asia. The pottery had strange geometric patterns, almost like something you'd find in ancient Mesoamerica. The material itself was a puzzle. It contained trace minerals that didn't belong in the Gobi. It was a breadcrumb, a tiny anomaly that whispered of a much, much bigger story buried beneath their feet. The team documented everything. They cataloged each tiny piece, noting its exact location. At first, they thought it was a fluke, maybe a single traded item that traveled thousands of miles. But then they found more. Not just pottery, but small carved stones with symbols that resembled no known language. They found metal shards that, upon analysis, were an alloy that shouldn't have been possible with the technology of the era. The clues were piling up, each one was a question mark. They weren't just finding artifacts from a forgotten camp, they were finding evidence of a sophisticated, settled culture in a place where none was supposed to exist. The mystery was deepening with every shovelful of sand. This wasn't just another dig anymore, it became an obsession. Dr. Thorne knew they were onto something huge. The small clues were pointing to a massive, hidden truth. He described the feeling as standing at the edge of a dark room with a single match. You can only see a tiny bit, but you know the room is vast and full of things you can't yet comprehend. The team had to make a choice. They could publish their findings on these strange fragments and let others debate them. Or they could go all in. They could follow the trail, no matter how impossible it seemed. They chose to go all in. They decided to find the source. They were about to step into the unknown. The desert is good at keeping secrets. The team had a few square miles of artifacts, but no structures, no buildings, no city. It was like finding seashells scattered across a continent with no sign of an ocean. They knew something big was here, but they couldn't see it. The wind and sand had erased it from the surface. For months, they used traditional ground-penetrating radar, but the results were confusing. The data showed anomalies, but they were too deep, too vast to make sense of. Frustration mounted. They were sitting on top of the biggest discovery in a century and they were blind. They needed a new way to see. They needed to look down from the heavens. That's when they brought in the big guns satellite imaging. Specifically, they used advanced multispectral imaging satellites. These incredible pieces of technology can see things the human eye can't. They can detect subtle changes in soil density, temperature, and even chemical composition from hundreds of miles up. The team partnered with a private space technology firm. They aimed the satellite's powerful lens at their patch of the Gobi. They patiently waited as the data streamed back to their field computers. They were looking for patterns. They were hoping for a ghost, a faint outline of what once was. What they got was so much more. The images were breathtaking. The satellite had peeled back the desert like a blanket. Beneath the sand, clear as day, were the outlines of a sprawling complex. It wasn't a small settlement, it was a city. A massive, meticulously planned city with wide boulevards, large plazas, and what looked like towering pyramids. The scale was staggering. It was larger than any known contemporary site in the region. The satellite had given them a map. It showed them exactly where to dig. The feeling in the camp was electric. They were no longer searching for clues. They were about to excavate a lost civilization. The ghost had a shape, and it was magnificent. With the satellite map as their guide, the team began targeted excavations. The work was precise, almost surgical. They weren't just digging randomly anymore. They knew where the main temple was. They knew where the residential areas were. Within weeks, the tops of walls began to emerge from the sand. The architecture was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a mind-bending fusion of styles. You could see elements that looked East Asian, but also structures that echoed the step pyramids of Central America. It was as if architects from opposite ends of the world had come together to build this place. The city, which they named Xanthi, the city of the unseen, was real, and it was already breaking all the rules. As more of Xanthi was uncovered, the puzzle only grew deeper. The architecture was the biggest shock. Experts from around the world were flown in, and they all said the same thing: this shouldn't be here. One structure, a massive central pyramid, was the centerpiece of the mystery. Its base was built with a precision stone-cutting technique reminiscent of the Inca in Peru. But the upper levels featured swooping tiled roofs that were clearly influenced by ancient Chinese design. And adorning the entrance were carvings that looked strikingly similar to Olmec heads from Mexico. It was a crossroads of cultures, a melting pot of architectural genius that defied all known timelines of contact between these civilizations. The layout of the city was another marvel. It was designed with an incredible understanding of astronomy. The main avenues aligned perfectly with the solar and lunar solstices. This wasn't just a place to live, it was a massive celestial clock. The precision suggested a deep, sophisticated knowledge of mathematics and engineering. This wasn't the work of a primitive, isolated tribe. This was the work of a major civilization, one that apparently had access to a global library of knowledge. How was this possible? According to our history books, these cultures were separated by vast oceans and thousands of years of development. They never met. Yet, here was a city that said otherwise. Every new building uncovered added another layer to the enigma. They found what appeared to be a grand library, but its structure was open air, with massive stone pillars designed to track the shadows of the sun throughout the day. They unearthed an observatory with a complex series of channels cut into the floor, which some believe were filled with water to create a perfectly still surface for observing the stars. The craftsmanship was exquisite. The materials were sourced from all over the world. They found lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, jade from China, and turquoise that geologically matched mines in the American Southwest. Xanthi wasn't just a city, it was a global hub. This discovery is a direct challenge to the old narrative. The long-held belief is that ancient civilizations developed in isolation. Sumeria, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, the Olmecs, they were all seen as separate cradles of civilization. There was limited trade, sure, but the idea of a true global culture in deep antiquity was considered fantasy. Xanthi suggests that this view is wrong. It suggests that there was a period in our distant past where knowledge and people moved freely across the globe. It points to a lost chapter of human history, a time when the world was more connected than we ever dared to imagine. This city shouldn't exist, but it does, and we have to figure out what it means. The implications of Xanthi are, honestly, monumental. It forces us to ask a difficult question: what if our understanding of prehistory is fundamentally flawed? For generations we've been taught that significant cross-oceanic contact before Columbus was impossible, or at least extremely rare. The Bering Strait land bridge theory has been the dominant explanation for how humans first populated the Americas. But Xanthi throws a wrench into that entire timeline. The presence of what appears to be American architectural styles and materials in a Central Asian city dating back thousands of years suggests a two-way street. It means people might not have just traveled from Asia to America, but also from America to Asia. This is where the story gets really interesting, especially for American history. The discovery has ignited huge interest in the United States. Pre-Columbian history in the Americas is already filled with mysteries, like the sudden rise and fall of complex societies. Xanthi provides a potential external influence, a connection that could explain some of these puzzles. Could the architects of Xanthi have visited the Americas? Did they share their knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering? Or was it the other way around? Did ancient American innovators travel west, bringing their ideas with them? The discovery opens up a world of possibilities that were once dismissed as fringe theories. Dr. Elena Vance, a specialist in American prehistory, put it this way: "We've always looked for the origins of American civilizations within the Americas. We assumed they were homegrown. Xanthi tells us we may have been looking in too small a box. The story of the first Americans might not have started in America. It might be part of a much larger, global human story." This is honestly a radical shift in thinking. It connects the history of the pyramids in Giza, the step pyramids of Mexico, and now the hybrid structures of Xanthi. It suggests they might not be isolated wonders but branches of the same ancient, sprawling tree of knowledge. Of course, this is a controversial idea. It challenges decades of established academic consensus, but the evidence from Xanthu is hard to ignore. The architectural similarities are too numerous, the material sourcing is too specific, and the astronomical alignments are too precise to be a coincidence. The discovery doesn't erase our current understanding of history, but it adds a bold, new chapter right at the beginning. It suggests that our ancient ancestors were not primitive people living in isolated pockets. They were explorers, they were innovators, and they were connected in ways we are only just beginning to understand. The first chapters of history are being rewritten right now, in the sands of the Gobi. Just when the world was starting to process the existence of Xanthu, the team made their most incredible discovery yet. While excavating the base of the main pyramid, they found something that wasn't on any of the satellite scans. It was a doorway, sealed with a single massive stone plug that had no visible seams or handles. It took the team a week of careful, painstaking work to figure out how to open it. Using sonic resonators, they discovered a hidden internal mechanism. With a low groan that echoed for the first time in millennia, the stone plug slowly retracted into the wall, revealing a dark, silent passageway leading down into the heart of the pyramid. What they found inside was a small, perfectly preserved chamber. The air was still and cool. The walls were not made of stone but of a smooth, dark, crystalline material that seemed to just absorb the light from their flashlights, and covering every inch of the walls and ceiling was writing. But it wasn't any known script. It was a complex system of symbols, some geometric, some looking like constellations, and some resembling biological structures. It was a language that was utterly alien. In the center of the room, resting on a simple obsidian pedestal, was a single stunning artifact, a sphere of the same dark crystal, about the size of a bowling ball. As they brought in portable lights, they realized the sphere was not just a solid object. When light hit it from a certain angle, it projected a complex three-dimensional image into the air above it. It was a star map, but it was a star map of a sky that is not our own. Some constellations were recognizable, but they were in the wrong positions, distorted as if viewed from a different point in space or perhaps a different point in time. The map also showed planetary bodies and trajectories that don't match our solar system. Was this a map of their home world, or was it a map showing a journey through the cosmos? The questions were honestly staggering. Alongside the sphere, they found other artifacts. There were thin metallic plates inscribed with the same unknown language. There were small, intricate models of what looked like complex machinery, and in a small niche in the wall, they found a collection of seeds, perfectly preserved in a clay jar. These weren't seeds for wheat or barley. Genetic analysis is still ongoing, but initial reports suggest they are unlike any known terrestrial plant species. This chamber wasn't a tomb for a king. It was a time capsule. It was a vault of knowledge left behind by a people with a profound understanding of science, language, and the stars. And we have only just begun to decipher its secrets. The news of Xanthu and the Celestial Chamber exploded across the globe. It was the lead story on every news channel, the top trend on every social media platform. The world was captivated. The public imagination ran wild with theories about who built this impossible city. Were they survivors of a known ancient civilization like Atlantis or Mu? Were they a previously unknown mother culture that seeded civilizations around the world? Or, as the more sensational headlines suggested, did they have an otherworldly origin? The discovery tapped into a deep human fascination with our own mysterious past. The excitement was palpable, a rare moment of global wonder. Naturally, with great excitement comes great skepticism. The academic world was thrown into turmoil. While many archaeologists and historians were cautiously optimistic, a vocal contingent raised serious doubts. They argued that the findings were being misinterpreted. The architectural similarities, they claimed, were merely coincidences, examples of convergent evolution, where different cultures independently arrive at similar solutions. They demanded more rigorous, peer-reviewed data before they would even consider rewriting the textbooks. Some even suggested the possibility of an elaborate hoax, though the sheer scale of the site and the credibility of Dr. Thorne's team made that unlikely. The debate is fierce. Every new piece of evidence from the site is scrutinized, analyzed, and argued over by experts on online forums and in academic journals. The undeciphered script is a major point of contention. Cryptographers and linguists from around the world are working on it, but with no Rosetta Stone to provide a key, progress is slow. Skeptics argue that until the script is translated, any interpretation of the site's purpose is pure speculation. They warn against jumping to fantastic conclusions based on what could simply be a unique but entirely human, isolated culture. The burden of proof, they rightly say, is on the discoverers. Despite the skepticism, the pile of evidence continues to grow. Each day, the excavation at Xanthu reveals something new that supports the initial extraordinary claims. More artifacts showing global material sourcing are found. More buildings with hybrid architecture are unearthed. The team is meticulously documenting everything, knowing that their work is under a global microscope. They welcome the skepticism, they understand it. Science progresses through challenge and debate. But as Dr. Thorne stated in a recent press conference, the evidence is on our side. And it is telling a story that is grander than any of us could have ever imagined. The world is right to be skeptical, but it is also right to be excited. Today on September 2, 2025, the work at Xanthu continues at a feverish pace. The site has been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site to protect it, and a multinational team of scientists is now on location. The excavation has expanded and the sheer size of the city is still not fully known. The satellite maps suggest it could be even larger, with suburbs and agricultural zones still buried under the sands. The primary focus now is on preservation and analysis. Every artifact is being carefully conserved, and every symbol is being digitally scanned to create a massive database for linguists to study. The goal is no longer just to dig, but to understand. The biggest mysteries remain unsolved, hanging over the site like the desert stars. Who were the people of Xanthu? Where did they come from and where did they go? The city shows signs of being abandoned suddenly, but there is no evidence of war or natural disaster. It's as if they just left. And what is the meaning of the celestial map? Is it a record of a real journey, a spiritual guide, or a prophetic warning? The undeciphered script holds the key. Cracking that code is the #1 priority. It's the final frontier of this incredible discovery, the key that could unlock not just the secrets of Xanthu, but a new understanding of our place in the universe. The hope is that Xanthu will be the bridge that connects the fragmented stories of our ancient past. It offers the tantalizing possibility that the ancient Egyptians, the early Chinese dynasties, and the first peoples of the Americas were not strangers to one another. They may have been part of a shared human legacy, a global network of knowledge and exploration that has been forgotten. This site could be the evidence that proves we were a global species long before the age of sail, connected by curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. The answers won't come easy, but for the first time, we know where to look. The story of Xanthu is far from over. In many ways, it has just begun. It is a journey back in time, to the very dawn of civilization. It's an adventure that reminds us that there are still mysteries hidden in the blank spaces of the map, secrets buried right under our feet. The frontier of discovery is not just in the depths of space or the bottom of the ocean. Sometimes, it's in the past. And right now, in the middle of the Gobi Desert, we are pushing back the boundaries of that frontier, searching for answers that will forever change how we see ourselves. The expedition continues.